This video is going to introduce the third way to write a linear equation. It's called standard form, and the general equation is going to be ax plus by equals c, where a, b, and c are all going to be whole numbers. So for example, you could see an equation that says 3x plus 4y equals 12. We know that this equation is going to give us a linear equation, a linear graph, because we have an x and we have a y and there are no exponents. Okay, so just quickly, I want to prove to you that this equation is the same thing or can be rewritten into slope-intercept form, which, one more time, it's y equals mx plus b. Alright, so if you can try this on your own, pause this video and give it a try. You want to get it into y equals mx plus b. Okay, hopefully you have tried it, and now let's do it together. Your first step is to subtract 3x to both sides. You're going to end up with 4y, and I'm just going to write negative 3x plus 12 to have the x in front. My last step is to divide through all the terms by 4, and I'm going to end up with my slope-intercept form, which is y equals negative 3 over 4x plus 3. Now, if you remember from class, the reason why this equation is so useful is because it immediately gives you your slope, which is negative 3 over 4, and it gives you your y-intercept, which is 3. Now I'd like you to rewrite this equation, 3x plus 4y equals 12, and we're going to talk about how standard form is useful in its own way, and how we can go straight from this equation and plot it onto our graph. So what you need is to have the equation written. You need to have the coordinate plane. Just draw yourself an x-axis and a y-axis. And let's go. So our first step is going to be to graph some y-intercepts. Okay, this is the same thing. Right, this is our first step when we have the equation is in y equals mx plus b form. And if you remember from literally 1 minute ago, we had this equation rewritten as y equals negative 3 over 4x plus 3. Okay, but without having to do that, which was, a little bit of an effort, how can I just get the y-intercept? So the definition of a y-intercept is the y-coordinate when x equals 0. Right? So that's always true. I have an equation right here. Right? I have this equation. All I want to do is plug in 0 for x and figure out what y is. And that should be my y-intercept. So let's do this. I'm going to make my work nice and neat. I'm going to show that I plugged in 0 for x by doing that. Plus 4y equals 12. 3 times 0 is just 0, and I'm going to end up with 4y equals 12, and hopefully you can solve that and say, well, y is 3. Remember, we just solved for a point, right? It's a y-intercept. The coordinate point is 0, 3, and I can plot that on my graph, right? It's 0, 3, 1, 2, 3. Here I am. I'm going to label it 0, 3. Okay. But to write a linear, or to graph a linear line, I need 2 points. I need at least 2 points. So my second point, maybe you can guess, will be to find my x-intercept. Okay. So if you think about it, right, if a y-intercept somewhere on this line, right, y-intercept is somewhere on this line and therefore x is 0, an x-intercept is going to be the x-coordinate when y equals 0. So again, I go back to my original equation. I'm going to plug in 0 for y, and I'm going to show my work. And then 4 times 0 is just 0. I end up with 3x equals 12, and therefore x equals 4. Okay, that point, right, remember x-intercept is a point, is 4, 0. And I can plot that on my graph. Here it is. And this is what my graph looks like if I were to connect those nicely. Okay, so let's quickly check. We revisit this slope-intercept form that we know that these are equal equations, right? They're equivalent. From this equation, I know that my y-intercept is 3. Yeah, we got the same thing. And my slope is negative 3 over 4, which means from this point, I should be able to go down 3 and over to the right 4, and there we go. So we can prove it in both ways, but the standard form is nice because you can easily plug in 0 and find those 2 points. Okay, I think you're ready to try to graph this on your own. Write down the example and find both x and y intercepts. Make sure you're showing your work and plot it on a coordinate plane. Okay, so hopefully you have tried it. Let's go through this together. I'm just going to go with the x-intercept first. Not sure why. We're going to say x-intercept is when y equals 0. So I'm going to plug into my equation 0 for y. I'm doing this a little bit quickly. Remember 5 times 0 is 0. Divide through by negative 2 and you get x equals negative 5. My point is negative 5, 0. Okay. Y-intercept is when x equals 0. So negative 2, 0 plus 5y equals 10. That ends up being 0. 5y equals 10, so y equals 2. My point is 0, 2. I go to my coordinate plane. I label it x and y. Hopefully you're doing the same thing. My x-intercept is negative 5, 0. And you can label it just negative 5, or you can plot negative 5, 0. And then 0, 2 is my y-intercept. And here is my line. And you can always check this on Desmos, right? If you go to your Desmos app or your website and just write in this equation, you should end up with the same line. And I'm going to ask you to do that on the homework, so you can try that as well. I know we're going quickly here, but just hang in there and keep taking notes and writing down any questions that you may have. Our last thing right now is to talk about how to write an equation in standard form. So we've talked about how to graph an equation in standard form, and now we're going to learn how to write an equation in standard form. So the first example is going to be to write an equation through the following equation of the line that goes through the following 2 points, negative 2, 5, and 2, negative 3. Okay, so you notice that I did not give you the y-intercept, right? Neither of these points gives you the y-intercept. So I'm forced to use my point-slope form. Now the point-slope form, if you remember, is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. In order to use this formula, my first step is to figure out what slope is. So over here I'm going to find slope. Slope is the change in y over the change in x. So it's going to be, let's go, 5 minus negative 3, which I'm just going to do 5 plus 3. And then negative 2 minus 2. So that just simplifies to be 8 over negative 4, which is just negative 2. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick this first point, negative 2, 5, to plug into my equation. So it's just going to be y minus 5 equals, right, because the y goes with the 5, negative 2, parentheses, x minus negative 2, so I'm just going to write x plus 2. And then I'm going to rewrite it into slope-intercept form. So I'm going to distribute the negative 2. I'm going to end up with y minus 5 equals negative 2x minus 4. I'm going to add 5 to both sides. And I'm going to have y equals negative 2x plus 1. And this part, hopefully, you were able to do. Now, because it's saying to write it in standard form, I'm going to write the general form, which is ax plus by equals c, just to have in front of me so I remember what variables need to be where. And remember, c is just a constant. C is just whatever number it is. And I noticed that my x, my term with the x, has to be on the left side. So I'm going to start with y equals negative 2x plus 1. But my first step is going to be to add the 2x to both sides to get that x term on the left side so they match. I'm going to have 2x plus y. I can't combine them because they're not like terms. Equals 1. And that's it, right? 2 is my a. The coefficient in front of the y is just a 1, so that's my b. And my c is 1. And now I've rewritten, I went from point-slope form to slope-intercept form and into standard form. Okay, I would like you to try this example on your own. Please write me an equation of the line that goes through the following 2 points in standard form. Okay, if you feel comfortable, pause the video and give it a try. Okay, so I'm going to give you the answer, which is 2y plus x equals 6. If you did not get that, you should be watching the rest of the video where I explain to you how to get this answer. Okay, so the first step is to get slope. Slope was negative 1 over 2. If you did not get that, you should go check out how to find slope again. I'm going to plug this into slope-intercept form, and I'm going to choose this second point. So it's going to be y minus 4 equals negative 1/2 x plus 2. Okay, I'm going to distribute this negative 1/2. And this might be tricky for some of you. And if it's hard for you, then you should be practicing some operations with fractions. But just remember, negative 1/2 x, if I'm multiplying negative 1/2 with 2 over 1, it's just negative 2 over 2, which is the same thing as saying negative 1. Finally, I'm going to add 4 to both sides, and I'm going to end up with y equals negative 1/2 x plus 3. So hopefully you were able to get to this spot. Now, I'm going to again rewrite ax plus by equals c, the form that I would like it to be in. And my first step is going to be to add the term with x and move it over to the left side. So I'm going to have 1/2 x plus y equals 3. The only problem here is that a, b, and c all have to be whole numbers. Okay? So because the coefficient on the x is a fraction, I need to figure out a way to get it into a whole number. And the way to do that is by multiplying 2 to every single term. So when I do that, I end up with x, right? 2 times 1/2 is just 1, plus 2y equals 6. And that's my final answer. And that's the end of the video.